Do you remember a time where you would find yourself in front of the TV in the living room, and next thing you know, you're looking at a Zoo Books commercial, and you look at it and you wonder, man, I want some Zoo Books. I could even get the tiger poster. I gotta tell mom and dad to order this. Well, if you've had that experience, then I guess we're not too different. I happened to run into some old commercials, and they really got me thinking, have things really changed? Like, I don't think nostalgia really exists anymore. At least, not the way it did for us. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. So if y'all are ready to hear my take on this, let's strap on in. Let's get talking. Howdy everybody, it's Chip again. And just like I said earlier, I want to do something a little different this time and kind of talk about, nostalgia or, the lack thereof. And I guess the perfect way to word it is how I got right here behind me is what happened to TV nostalgia, I kind of narrowed it down to three topics. The death of monoculture, algorithms, and growth of streaming services. And I kind of wanted to, break each one down and go a little more into depth on what each of them means. So let's just go ahead and do that. So for starters, monoculture, that's a new one, right? Not really a word you hear all that much, but I guess the easiest way to sum it up would probably have to be, let me give you an example. Let's go back to 2013, 14, if you're old enough to remember that. I want to say it was around that time, there was a trend going around, the Harlem Shake. That dates, that probably throws a little nostalgia for everybody right there. But it used to be a thing where everyone did it. You would see it everywhere. You'd see videos of it everywhere. You would see your friends doing it. You'd do it. You would see brands doing it. Everybody did it. It was just like everybody did it once. Everyone knew what the Harlem Shake was. Or another thing, Party Rock Anthem. When that song came out, it was really popular. And yeah, people know it now. But at the time, it was like the song. Everybody knew it. Everybody wanted to shuffle. That was the thing. It wasn't just a few people or a majority of people. It was like everybody. And just like in the name monoculture, that's what it was. It was a lot of people just together as one. We just had one giant culture, one giant popular thing. And you don't see that anymore. Yeah, you may see a trend here and there. You may see a catchphrase here and there. But some people aren't going to know what it is. Some people will know, some people won't. And I think that's a really, really big factor as to why nostalgia, I'm afraid, honestly, isn't going to be a thing for future generations. Because it's that thing you like when things get, when you get a little sad or you just want to look back in memory lane. It's that one thing you want to listen to, or see. It's the nostalgic thing, oh, take me back to that time when things were simpler. And if you don't have that, I'm afraid that it's just going to be harder to cope, for people down the line. And I just want to kind of lay out a couple examples, at least what I felt were monoculture to me growing up. Just like y'all saw in the intro, TV commercials are a big one too. But like specifically the ones that would show on like cartoon channels. And that kind of goes in hand with the other part, like the cartoons themselves. I remember being in elementary school and there would be talks about what shows were on. Like, hey, those new episode of Jimmy Neutron, Fairly Odd Parents, or if you were a Disney person, there might have been Hannah Montana. That was one where like it was all over the place. You'd see stickers, decor. It was just everywhere. It'd be like, oh, did you see the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour? Did you see when they had Jimmy Neutron and Fairly Odd Parents come into the same show? Like, that was cool. They had multiple parts. Everyone talked about it. Or Cartoon Network. Hey, did you see the new episode of... I can't... It's in my head right now, but like, the reruns are, oh, I was watching Samurai Jack. Oh, I was watching Samurai Jack, too. The stuff like that, the reruns, but it was what everyone saw. Oh, Adventure Time, yeah. The new episode of Adventure Time. It was something that everyone spoke about, Yeah, you had your interests, like, again, you had the Disney kids, you had the Nickelodeon kids, and you had the Cartoon Network kids. But at the end of the day, you kind of like everyone knew what you were talking about. And then again, there was the commercials, which is a whole nother can of worms. Like my intro showed, zoo books. Who didn't want zoo books, Or the Zoop House, the plates with the food, they're like little plates that look like animals. Or all those Betty Crocker commercials where it showed like those cake pans of like, oh, you can make amazing cakes with this. Just 3 easy payments of $1,000. It was always super expensive. Get something free, and it was never free because you needed to pay shipping and handling. I never ordered it. My parents never wanted to order it. Like, looking back, it was overpriced. I could see why. But at the time, you're like, Mom, Dad, I want it. Why not? But it was always something that people could reference. It was always something that everybody was like, oh yeah, I know that commercial. Like I bet if I find someone, they grew up with those same commercials that still had that little hint of monoculture, I could probably go up to them and say, you already had Chef 3 times this week, and be like, oh, but I love Chef, and they're gonna know I'm talking about the Chef Boyardee commercial, or those old Cinnamon Toast Crunch ones were like crazy good, they were always licking each other. Pause. Or even the Goldfish commercials, the snack that smiles back, all that. You always had all these catchphrases, and maybe it's just corporate brainwashing, but I just see it as nostalgia. It's just like, man, things were easy back then. Things were nice. It brings that connection with me and other people that were my age at the time, and it's beautiful. At least I think it's beautiful because it's a human connection that we don't really have anymore. And again, that's the monoculture we don't see anymore. It's just kind of like mini groups, mini subcultures, echo chambers, and cliques. Just, we're not one culture anymore. We're just a bunch of little cultures, and that may sound cool on paper, but in reality, it just makes us more distant from each other. And it's kind of sad, and I kind of like hurt for the ones that are growing up without that monoculture. On the topic of, TV commercials and stuff, the style, the retro style. Why is it that we let fashion come back, but not the other parts of the era? We have baggy pants that are back. We have the crop tops. We got chunky shoes. We got all the fashion stuff early 2000s coming back. It's nostalgia. But why can't we have the nostalgia of the products themselves? Like a retro design. Because like on the topic of commercials, I remember there was this commercial for the snowman for Nestea. I think it was called Cool or Chill, but it's what eventually I believe became Brisk. But I remember it being so cool because at the time it had these pictures of like the snowman. He was always so angry. He was so angry, but it looked cool. And I remember you would see the retro machines, the old vending machines that had them on it, and it was just so cool to see that. And we don't have that. We don't have retro products. That would be cool. It gave some character. Now everything's so, minimalistic, and it's so boring and bland and playing it safe. Nothing hits that radical feel, for lack of better words. But you get what I mean when I say, oh, radical, intense, boom, out there. It's all gone so bland. It's all gone so corporate. It's all about how can we minimize efficiency and, not put much effort. And that it's just not, there's no life in anything anymore, So the part of culture we do have, the products that we all eat, even that lacks life. And it's just really sad, but I guess that's just how things are. And I just think we just let it slip through our fingers too much, and we take nostalgia for granted. And then when they do want to bring it back, it's just because they want to sell stuff to us. But in reality, I think we need to bring it back for the sake of just the younger generation, so they have something to attach to, so they have a sense of character, so they have a connection and growth to each other like we did back in the day. Even in products, if you could even think about products, there was that monoculture there too. I keep taking it back to, childhood, because it's just the easiest part to remember. And a lot of nostalgia has to do with younger years. And those were like pretty much in my younger years. So just, again, like the products, the toys, like Pokemon. Yeah, it's still around, but now it's just, oh, how many cards can I get? Can I resell? And that's all, because nobody buys for nostalgia anymore. They buy it for greed. I can understand if it's like adults buying it for nostalgia and it's like, oh, I really miss these cards, I really want to get back into the hobby. But when they're just hoarding it to sell it and not even letting the kids get it, then they don't get their little monoculture. They don't have that collective, interest. I remember growing up, there was Byakugan, there was even Naruto cards. They had these old Naruto cards, and then even with that, there was a the Pokemon cards. There was the Pokemon games too. On the DS's. It gave that character to it. Where you would go to your friends, sneak in a DS to school, and then a lunch break be like, dude, check out this Pokemon I got. Oh, how'd you beat that? Oh, I got it. Here's how I got it. Hey, you want to trade this? Or you would even hear rumors about those events they would hold where they would give Pokemon away. Like, oh, I hear Toys R Us is giving away a Pokemon for Diamond or for Pearl or even Platinum. And then you'd be like, oh, I also heard GameStop's giving out a Pokemon too. I think they're giving out another one. And then here you are with your friend, and you have these legendary Pokemons that you went to the store to get. And now you have that core memory of, hey, now whenever I see this Pokemon, whenever I see that store, I remember when I was little and, had the innocence of just a child, and me and my friend just need to get a Pokemon, we talked about it. I still remember this one time where I had my collection of Pokemon cards. I took them to school, and I remember, you're little, you don't really know how to play the cards properly, and I just took a stack of cards. My friend took a stack of cards, and there was a guy who took a huge stack of cards, and we just kind of 2v1, and we just played it real simple, being kids. Like, we just basically shoveled about our cards, and it was like, oh, my Pokemon had more health, and you're out, whatever, that type of thing. I mean, house rules. But now, whenever I see Pokemon cards, I always think of that, and it brings a little joy, to me, thinking, man, that was great. We got real close, and now it's just real sad because you'll just see a kid on the phone. You see them just drowning their attention on that, and then when there is an opportunity to form those collective memories, like, again, especially Pokemon, such a strong thing to do it with, you have people hoarding it with greed and ruining that and being selfish, and it's just kind of like, it's not even for nostalgia's sake. It's not even like, oh, I'm being selfish because I want to remember my good times. You're just not even giving them a chance to, and it's kind of infuriating, So even when there's opportunities for the monoculture, we don't even give them the chance for that. Like, what? Because you want to make a couple $100, maybe an extra 20? You're ruining that, and think of the long term. Now you're gonna have these miserable adults that don't have anything to look back fondly at except the faint memories of a screen from a fried attention span, all because we won't cherish their chance to grow memories like our parents did us. But it's just very frustrating that they don't got that. I think we should just accept the fact that nostalgia again is in real danger. On the topic of fried attention spans on a little screen, that brings us on to our second topic, the algorithms. As if it's not bad enough that there's so many things you could do to consume, like content, so that alone will keep things different. There's the fact of the algorithms. It wants, I guess for everything, it wants you to stay on as long as possible, whether that be an upset you or entertain you with just mush and slop. You're gonna get targeted by the algorithms to stay on whatever app you're on, especially like TikTok. See, with TikTok, it's gonna show you garbage. It's gonna show you just movie clips, stuff. Instead of going and watch a whole movie, you got a fried attention span now. You can only watch a 50-second clip of a movie, or you're just being shown things that upset you because you react to it, and the algorithm knows, hey, well, we keep them on here, have them argue into the void as long as it gets us ad revenue. And since so many people get upset by certain different things, or their attention span is only caught by certain things, the algorithm for everybody is very different. So, like I said, we could be living in echo chambers, or we could be in our own little, I guess you want to call it, communities or niches, or niches or whatever you want to call it, and you never get to experience other things. You know, you never get to see a show you might not like. You never get to hear a song you might not like. You never get to hear an opinion that you may, you know, grow from or defer. And with that, that pushes away, again, common ground that people can have. You know, there isn't a song that everybody likes anymore. There isn't a show or movie that everybody likes anymore. You know, it's what's trending. And even then, you know, a show gets popular, people will watch it because the algorithm pushes it, and then they drop it. You know, never really stuck with them. It never sticks around long enough or leaves enough of an impact other than the quick dopamine hit. So it doesn't become nostalgic for them. They don't think, oh yeah, I remember that show. Oh yeah, I remember that song. Oh yeah, I remember this or that. No, it's just on to the next. Where's my next dopamine hit? So, and the algorithm, I guess, if you want to reward it to dopamine damage, is the really big issue too. Nobody's getting anything. I guess you could really see where the monoculture, I get throwing it back into monoculture, was really kind of touching still any form of social media algorithms. Was, I guess, Vine. I think Vine's a perfect example. If y'all remember Vine, it had algorithms, so it showed you what you wanted to see or what it thought you wanted to see or what was popular, but the things that came out of it, again, were creative. They weren't just slop. So they left an impact. They left a memory. So you could have huge vines that, like, people still reference to this day if you're familiar with it. You know, like, oh, every time I see a potato or a fan, you know, I'm always going, you know, a potato flew around my room. You know, there's that. Or the other one's like, oh, they that backflip throw, you know, oh, they took a oh, but that backflip throw, you know, like, that's another one. Or road work ahead, I sure hope it does. You know, there's people I've met that they know what I'm referencing, they still remember it, you know. And there's so many creators, there's so many memorable videos that came from Vine, you know, like, oh, free Shavakadu, or the Target, or the, oh man, there's so many. There's just so many. But you see my point, where even though, like, they were small, it was the creativity behind it, and the fact that the algorithm isn't what it was, isn't what it is now. There was still personality, and with that, even then, it wasn't it was a little older by then, and a lot of people, you know, who relate to the original topic of the commercial stuff are probably a little older at the time of Vine too. And even then, there's still that nostalgic impact. So that is attached to nostalgia. It can take me back to those years, you know, my still young years, but a little older. And it makes me feel, you know, good. Like, oh man, I remember when that Vine was real popular, you know, that video. And it takes you back to, like, the Harlem Shake I mentioned earlier. Harlem Shake, the shuffling was around that time frame. And it could all be clumped up together and take back that nostalgic feel because of the lack of what the algorithms have become. It was a simple algorithm. This is funny, this is popular, we're going to show it to everybody. You know, viral meant everybody sees it, not just a little group sees it. Everybody sees it. So then again, it became a part of our, you know, that generation that you know, that experienced all those funny forms of media. And it's just real sad to see that it's become something else, and that what the algorithms are not going to have the same effect. It's just frying people's brains, and it's just a matter of what could rile people up or what could temporarily satisfy their dopamine, and it's never going to stick. It's never going to be long term. It's just a short-term distraction, so that won't even form in nostalgia. You know, people might be nostalgic of a certain meme, but even then, they'll get over real quick. They're not going to look back fondly at it. I remember last time someone's like, I remember that Instagram or that TikTok meme, you know, for the longest time. Oh, it makes people good. They might be like, oh, I remember that was, you know, dumb, that meme. But nobody ever looks back and is like, oh yeah, I remember that. That was a good time. I remember when this happened. I remember that. It all flies by, and again, it's not sticking. So if it's not sticking for the older people, imagine the little ones that grew up with it, where their attention span is fried and they're looking for the next dopamine hit. No nostalgic for them, you know. And again, it goes back to this TV nostalgia part. All that stuff is happening on TV, and you can see where cable TV slowly started to fade away. And with that, the algorithms got introduced, and with that, everyone wasn't seeing the same handful of channels that were popular and big, a couple shows or a couple commercials. They got multiplied. So now there's a broad sense of options, and with those broad options, you don't get the same effect as you did before, when it was that, I guess, TV cable monoculture, if you want to call it that. So that looks like that takes care of the second topic of the algorithms. And now I guess we're on to the final topic of worlds of streaming services. And this one honestly isn't going to be that long of a topic. It's pretty self-explanatory. But like it says, you can't have TV nostalgia if you don't got TV. You don't got cable. You got streaming services. You know, even when streaming services first came out, there was like Netflix. It had like that one like huge library of movies and shows that you could just go on. Everyone's like, oh, get on Netflix. Okay, you can watch this, you can watch that. And everyone could find the same movie. You know, it kind of helped with that. But then it slowly became separated and more specified in what you're looking at. Horrors, you know, you got Shudder now, animation, you got like Disney Plus, anime, you got Crunchyroll, even, you know, even had Funimation too at one point, High Dive. And then you have things from movies like Netflix, you got HBO Max, you got Hulu, you got, what else you got? There's just a lot, you know. Even if you want to watch like Nickelodeon stuff, I'm sure there's a streaming service of that. You know, it's just so much stuff at once. It's a whole lot of everything and also a whole lot of nothing, if that makes sense. So as streaming services got more popular, we steered away from cable. And even then, now you're just kind of, you picking a team in a way. You're like, oh, I'm on Netflix. So do you watch the trendy thing on Netflix that, again, everyone's going to forget about a week later? You watch the new Disney Plus show that everyone's going to forget about 2 weeks from now? Do you watch anime, you know, and instead of having something collective like the popular shows everyone watched, you know, growing up, like, oh, you should go check out Cowboy Bebop, you know, and you go, or Black Lagoon. Maybe not watch that one growing up, but Dragon Ball, Naruto, you would go back and you would find a way to watch those, even though they're older than you probably, or you were growing up with them, and you had something common to talk about. Now it's just like, even if you're watching anime, where it got trendy, it's like, oh, what are you watching? Oh, I'm watching Spy Family, you know? Oh, what are you watching? Oh, I'm watching Bunny Girl Senpai. What about you? Oh, I'm watching Haikyuu. You know, like, there's just a million shows. Yeah, one might get popular for a season and then it drops off. When was the last time you heard somebody talk about Attack on Titan, you know, that wasn't watching it before the great anime shift, you know? Someone else watching it back in like 2014. They'll still talk about it, but the ones that caught up when it got trendy, they're not gonna mention it anymore. Demon Slayer, yeah, the new season hasn't come out yet. So yeah, last movie came out, that last movie, but people aren't talking about it. There's not this collective talking about it. Yeah, you had that one episode went crazy that kind of helped that great anime shift, but again, with even then, a specialized streaming service, there's still so many options, and that goes in hand again with the algorithms. You know, it might push a certain scene, everybody might check out that scene or maybe that show for that season, and then poof, everyone goes back, splits their ways to, oh, I'm gonna go to Disney Plus, oh, I'm gonna go to Netflix, oh, I'm gonna go to Hulu. You know, it's just, again, it's so weird. And I know people say it all the time, we are more connected than ever, but we're also so much more disconnected than ever. You know, we got each other's numbers and contacts and way to reach each other in the, you know, in the palm of our hand or in our pocket, and yet we can't even have a collective nostalgia anymore. You know, we can't even have a one thing we agree and be like, I remember this, I remember that. Let's skip 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even people can look back 2025 and be like, hey, I remember that, and it makes me feel real nostalgic. Oh, I remember that back then, I want to go back. You have people now talking about, oh, I remember 2017, I want to go back to 2017. And that's because that was probably towards the latter end of when there was a collective thing, you know, collective music and collective memes and media that we all consumed. That's probably where everyone looks at it so through rose tinted glasses, because it was the last thing around the last time we all have the collective culture. And then it all separated from them, musically became TikTok, and that's where it all went downhill because everybody wanted the TikTok algorithm. Can we get the most time of having people consume a whole lot of nothing? Because at the end of the day, that's why everyone doom scrolls. No one just scrolls. It used to be scrolling TikTok, scrolling Instagram. It's doom scrolling now, and everybody agrees. It's just become doom scrolling. That doom scrolling is all what people can remember. If your life flashed before your eyes right now, not that intense, but like you would have probably memories only if you're old enough to have those TV. I'm gonna call it the TV nostalgia moments. Those little monoculture pre-algorithm. You'll have those little moments pop up. But if we skip now 20 years ahead, or let's go 15 years ahead, and somebody's life flashed before their eyes that were growing up with the way things are now, what's gonna flash? They're just gonna see a blur of light from when they were scrolling through the screen, but they're not gonna remember anything. They're not gonna make anything look back fondly at. And that's the sad part. That's that honestly breaks my heart, because I'm a big fan of retro things and nostalgic things. I like retro vintage. I like shopping in person because it still has that human aspect to it. I think that's a big thing. I like retro stuff because it feels like there was more human connection, and we're all so separated now. Is that it hurts me to see people just accept the fact that they're just like, I got my nostalgia, let's forget about them. Like, no, I don't think we should. Just like some older generations forget about younger generations, like, oh, I got my money, I had my thing, my fun, I don't care about them. I don't think we should add to that cycle. I think we should break that cycle and instead, be the change we want to see. I know it sounds cheesy, but give them opportunity to have the nostalgia. Let the kids make mistakes, let them grow up and create nostalgia, and even our peers, even our own age groups, we should collectively just interact with each other more, talk more, create those memories, and make our own nostalgia if we have to. If it's no longer on the media, if it's no longer the corporations that are gonna try to sell us things with nostalgia and they gave up and they just want the algorithms and attention, then I think we gotta make our own nostalgia, make our own memories, start making that monoculture again, but without the TV nostalgia this time. Instead, it's our nostalgia, if that makes sense. Don't leave it to the stuff we consume online or the stuff we consume on streaming services, on TV, on apps. It should be the stuff we consume that we make for each other and the connections we make for each other. Forget the TV nostalgia. It's gonna be the connection nostalgia, the genuine memories that we have a chance to make. Probably get a little too philosophical here at the end, but I think that's genuinely what we should do. So, the next time you're up and about, you don't want to look back a year from now and be, man, that was a year. What I look back, what happens? A whole lot of nothing? No. Start making your own nostalgia, even if it's just a year old. When you see someone, have that conversation, open that door, ask how someone's day is going. Share that dessert with your coworker, your friend, a family member. Reach out to someone you haven't heard from in a while. Create that nostalgia. Look back and be like, man, I remember last year when I did this. I remember when this happened with that person. Form those connections, because I think nostalgia at the end of the day comes from those connections that are formed with a common interest or common media. And we don't have that common stuff anymore. So we gotta make it. Make those common moments. Make that common nostalgia. And just start being human again. Which is a little ironic coming from a chipmunk. But you get what I mean. But I guess that's just all my yapping. And if y'all liked what you saw, and you don't mind this type of content, because I don't mind yapping all that often, feel free to let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe. And next time I'm gonna go on a rant, don't be surprised if you see another one of these pop up. But in the meantime, Chip is out.